Welcome to the Veterans Archives podcast, where every veteran story is honored and celebrated. Join us as we delve into the rich histories and experiences of those who have served our nation. You can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, as well as every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Reads Across America Radio. At Veterans Archives, we believe your story matters. Visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org to explore more about our mission, discover resources for veterans, and stay updated on upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to engage with our community. Subscribe, like, and share to spread awareness about our veteran stories. Whether you're a veteran, a supporter, or simply curious about the profound journeys of those who have served, Veterans Archives invites you to listen in, learn, and be inspired. Join us as we continue to honor and preserve the legacies of our veterans. Today is Monday, October 14th, 2024. We're talking with Marvin Morehouse, who served in the United States Navy. So welcome, Marvin. Good to see you this morning.
I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to start out really simple today. I just want to ask, when and where were you born?
Verdonville, West Virginia. That's in Logan County. That's about it.
Okay. And when were you born?
1928.
Okay. And
March 31st, 1928, yes.
Okay. And is that referred to as West by God, Virginia?
Yeah. You know how that came about?
How? Tell me about that.
Well, when politics was heating up for the Civil War, Virginia and West Virginia were two different, it was all one country, all one state. And the settlers in the western counties had been political prisoners and had been sold themselves into slavery for passage to the United States. So when politics got hot for the Civil War, Virginia called up the militia. Guess who the militia was? Western counties of Virginia. Having been slaves themselves, West Virginia knew what slavery was, and they told Virginia, up your ass. And they seceded from Virginia and became West Virginia. And so that you will never mistake a West Virginian for a Virginian, you ask him where he's from, and he'll say, West by God, Virginia.
Well, thank you for that history lesson.
It might be miles from history, who knows.
Makes for a great story, though. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up. Did you have siblings? Just talk about your childhood a little bit. What do you remember?
My childhood probably started at 6 years old when my mother died. And I had three siblings, and life was a living hell.
Yeah.
I found out that black people are just like white people in West Virginia. I didn't know why at the time, but I can elaborate later. And so my mother went to church with the black ladies. And so when she died, the black ladies took me under their wing and fed me many times, because this is the heart of the Great Depression, remember?
Right.
Nobody could work, nobody worked, and the area close to the so-called camps was peopled by the long-timers. And so it was get by the skin of your teeth. I don't know how I would have managed. If my mother had lived, it would have been a pretty good existence, because she was very intelligent and very ambitious, and so she knew how to make a nickel stretch. But unfortunately, she died, so we were on our own. And I never really had a childhood, because I was sort of, in my opinion, kidnapped from my father by a sister she's evil. She's an evil sister. In fact, I suspect she might be the first cook in hell.
Oh, okay. All right. So she was quite a bit older than you then?
Oh, yeah. She had children my age.
Uh-huh.
And she took me to be companion to her own son, who she had kidnapped from her husband, who had custody in a divorce trial. And so we were fugitives all of my younger life with that family.
So did you move around a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Within the confines of West Virginia and Kentucky.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's a lot of stories connected with this.
So do you have I don't know if this is the right question or not. So with all of that going on though, do you have like a favorite memory of that time? I mean, that was a hard time. Your mom had passed away, your sister had taken you, and you're kind of on the run, but is there any time during that period where you think back and go, well, that made it okay, or that made it a little bit better, or just not at all?
No, I had good times with my nephew as a child.
Uh-huh.
And there was, well, I can recall one particular memory. The poor people, which we included everybody, I guess, scavenged coal from coal banks. When coal is mined, it's graded, and anything that has what they call gob, which is sulfur and other minerals onto it, they throw that aside, and that ends up on what was known as a slate dump. Mm-hmm. And so we always got those slate dumps and scavenged the good stuff from the bad, and that's how we heated our runner stoves and heated our fires. Now, my nephew and I were probably 9 years old, and we discovered we'd moved on a property that had once been the headquarters of a mining corporation that had went kaput, or bankrupt, probably. Mm-hmm. And we imagined ourselves to be miners, and we started mining this place, and we found out number one coal. So apparently when they closed the mine down, they dumped the cars that happened to be mined full of coal, and we were the benefactors of it. So we mined up as far as, probably 10, 15 feet under the mountain, under this mountain of coal garbage.
Right.
And we bragged about it. And not our parents, his parents and my sister wanted to see this fabulous coal mine that we'd discovered.
Uh-huh.
And that's when we paid the price of our adventure, because at any time we were looking for timbers. Back up. We were looking for timbers. We had to do it the way the miners do it. You see,
right?
Because we, in our imagination, were miners. And that's when all hell broke loose, because they found out that we were endangering our very lives, because at any time that mountain could have.
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Caved in on us, and we'd be gone forever. So we took a good tanning, and they closed the mine down.
So that mine got closed down twice then.
Yeah, and another time. Now, my sister was a what do you call them? I'll call it vagrant. She moved. She had to keep away from this ex-husband of hers because he was known to be a very violent man. He, a moonshiner, and had been in mine fights. You never know who got killed or who killed who, but that was quite common. West Virginia is probably the most violent state in the Union. Anyway, was always running from him, and so the brother-in-law had made his own homebrew and kept it a little too early, and it was in the closet, aging.
Right.
And sister was doing the laundry, and we had a house that, probably 5 or 10 acres around the house that the cow grazed into. And she had the 38 pistol in on the end of the ironing board because she wanted the light of the windows. And bang. So she took the pistol and went through the window and damn near killed her cow. She grazed her, and so she was determined that was her ex-husband going after his son. What it was one of the bottles with green beer, bottle too early, exploded, and the soup for the beer come under the closet door, and that was the explanation. So when the husband came home at about 8 o'clock in the morning, he was on the what they call a graveyard shift, and he said, "Who has been messing with my gun?" And she told him that she thought her ex-husband, Oscar Dingus, who was his name, maybe I shouldn't mention that.
Oh, that's okay.
Was after his son. And of course, he's seen the beer and and he said, "Well, you almost killed our cow. And she's bleeding like hell." So he raised a little hell, and it finally settled down. But that was a memory from those years.
So that beer almost cost that cow its life.
Yeah, it did.
Did the rest of that batch come out, do you know?
Well, yeah. Now we see we always put it in a well. The well's about 60 foot deep, and they dug that thing wide enough till a man could dig his way down, and buckets pulled up and with the dirt. And so we put our beer in a bucket, and this was a dry state, by the way.
Was it during Prohibition, right?
Prohibition was in force at the time. So we'd put our beer down, homemade homebrew, we call it, and in the well. And so one day, the county sheriff came by to do some trading with the head of the household, brother-in-law, and he wanted to have a beer. So he went to the well and just pulled himself up a drink, he thought, and he pulled up the beer.
Oh, no.
Well, I guess everything turned out all right, but it scared hell out of everybody because we knew we were breaking the law.
Right.
Yeah, and so that is a memory, and of course, there's lots of memories of picking coal where you could find it, and nothing real exciting as I can recall.
So were you able to go to school then at all during all of this time?
Well, yeah, we went to school, but I've been to so many schools, couldn't remember them all,
Yeah.
We moved around because she was always running from this, running from her reputation, I guess.
Yeah.
She stole her child, and she had to stay out of reach. And the coal mining community, everybody knows everybody. Like Bruce knows everybody in the Tri-County area.
Right.
He's in West Virginia, he'd be right at home. I remember the tales of the Mate 1 massacre. I could recite that for you. In fact, they made a movie of it. It's called the Mate 1 Massacre. And you might want to get it and see it sometimes. Sid Hatfield was the sheriff of Mingo County. And he was pro-union, of course. And the union were being organized, and they taken over greater areas as they could get membership. And they were on a strike, and the company owned all the housing, all the utilities, such as the light and the gas and so forth and so on. And you were slaves of a system. So when they went on strike, the miners, hired thugs of the mining company, the mining company per se, hired these guys to deputize them to empty out people's furniture on the street. Now, Sid Hatfield was a direct descendant of Devil Ants Hatfield, the Hatfield-McCoy people. And they came to town, and Sid Hatfield met him in the town called Matewan in Mingo County, probably 300 or 400 population at the time. That I don't know. Anyway, they had an argument, and when the dust settled, there was 12 people dead in the middle of the street, and Sid Hatfield's 2 guns were empty.
Oh.
So they tried to try him in a Mingo County court. Of course, they couldn't get a jury.
Right.
So they tried him in another county. I don't remember the county which it was, but when he appeared for trial or arraignment, he walking up the courthouse steps, and they assassinated him. The Coca-Cola interests assassinated him. Nobody was ever tried. Nobody was ever convicted of his assassination. And so ended the story of the Matewan massacre.
Wow.
That was pretty interesting to kids at that time, you know. We reenacted it with our made up wooden pistols. We didn't have cap busters. That took money.
Right. Well, so it's true then, though, like in these coal mining towns, though, that the coal mines, the companies had their own currency.
Oh yeah.
And you basically worked to pay them to live there.
Yeah. They had such a wide area, let's say 50 square mile. And in that, they hired people, destitute people, really, people from the South, much like Michigan hired people from the South after World War II, the industry here. So they hired whoever applied for a job if you could speak the language and understand enough language to follow orders. So black people, Hungarians, bull hunks, whatever, they all ended up in the coal mines. Now, getting back to how the blacks lived in harmony with the whites. You see, in the mines in those days, you always had a partner. No, you never went singly on the job. And that your partner might be a black man, he might be a Hungarian, he might be a German, whatever. And all day long you worked with that guy. You had his life in your hands. He had your life in his hands. You couldn't work with a man under those circumstances all day long in the mine and the danger that they lived in, and then snub him on the street.
Right.
So you were friends 24 hours a day. And the children they liked to have fights because my group and whoop your group.
Right.
We were
Kids will be kids, right?
As kids, yeah. and so I never knew. There never was a color line in my raising.
Right.
As long as I was there, of course, I left that country probably when I was 12 years old, and ended up in Ohio.
So let's talk about that. How'd you end up in Ohio?
Well, it started out with I lived with a maiden sister who got married, and he was a religious fellow and a farmer, ex-farmer, and he was coming in, toward the end of his life, and he wanted to move to Pike County, Ohio, where he had a brother, and to be a farmer. And so we moved, and of course he didn't last long because he had miner's lung, black lung. And he was mowing weeds one day and trying to get the area that we owned so he could farm it, and he passed out and died from asphyxiation, I guess. And so that's how I ended up in Pike County. And being a noble kid as I was, I figured if I couldn't do something to keep the family, help the family, I would go where I could. And that so happened that my brother-in-law, the sister that
From the sister that had kidnapped you? Okay.
they lived within 5 miles of us. And of course that was a magnet. And I ended up there as, you might say, a prisoner, a slave. They'd hire me out to the farmers in the area and collect my wages. I never saw any of them. I never seen the benefit of any of them. And I had a brother in the Army at the time, older brother, and he sent me an allotment, and I never seen any of that. In fact, when I graduated from the 8th grade, I graduated with clothing that my brother-in-law had, and they pinned them up on me, and they took my allotment and bought my nephew a new suit. Now, that was the circumstances.
Oh.
So I had a brother that was older brother that was going to free me from all this. So we made an arrangement that I would meet him at one of my dad's old cronies in West Virginia. And so I left home and ended up in West Virginia.
So how old were you when you took off then? You must have been what, 13, 14?
About 12, 13 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
And I ended up as a caretaker for a whorehouse, if you please.
Yes. So this was when we met this past winter. That story came up, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So how did this happen?
Well, my brother was a womanizer, and of the best. He was also a politician. He earned enough money from the Kennedy campaign to buy a gin mill in Phoenix, Arizona, because he knew everybody in the county like Bruce does, and he was very active in the elections, and especially the black elections. And ostensibly what they would do, they would have meetings of the Democratic Party, and they would have a big tub of beer and another smaller tub full of potted meat, minced ham they call it. They'd open it up and then have the whiskey chilled, because black people like to drink their whiskey chilled. And my brother, he coordinated all this. He knew everybody in the county, was friendly with everybody in the county, and screwed over half of the wives in the county. Cuckoldom, they call it.
Right.
You know what that means.
Yes, I do. I'm familiar with that term, Marvin.
So he was quite a guy. Well, anyway, he was going to free me from my enslavement. Mm-hmm. So he coaxed me to come back to the West Virginia. Now, my nephew and I, he was co-collaborator of this. We gathered up all my clothes that I could put on, mm-hmm. and all the money that we both had managed to scavenge. And so I took off on my thumb to West Virginia. And so I was there and to meet him, and he was going to take me back to Baltimore to work in the shipyards, where he was a welder at the time. Mm-hmm. And of course the war was in full bloom. And so he sent word that he couldn't come, and I was marooned because he had been up for a paternity trial, and they had a warrant for him. The people that the gal that he was supposed to have inseminated, I guess, had enough money to hire an attorney, so he was. If he come to West Virginia, they got him. It'd been penitentiary for him.
Right.
So I was stuck, and I earned my keep by taking care of 3 what they call weed monkeys in West Virginia. That's young women that sell themselves into prostitution to get enough money to escape the damn system, and that's how they escaped that 50-mile prison that they were in.
Right.
They'd go to a town like Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, or Indianapolis, wherever there was industry, and start a new life and forget the old life. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so there I was hung. Well, I couldn't make a living taking care of these girls. What I would do on Saturday night, miners, this is kind of getting disjointed, gamble, and they look forward to weekends, and they gambled all the weekends, and sometimes they get in their bank clothes, their dirty clothes that they wore in the mine, they'd go back into the mines on Monday and without ever been a visit sleep or whatever in a poker game. Now, when they would lose in the poker game, they would use their credit to sleep with one of the girls, and they had 3 of them there. Now, when I decided to stay with this old gentleman, he admonished me that I don't touch the whiskey or the women, and otherwise out.
Right, because that's a business.
Yeah. So I didn't. I believed him, and so that's the way we lived. Well, times were changing. The soldiers had begun to come home from the invasion, and he advised me that I would have to find a new place to live. And of course, I was 14 years old at the time. I remember it distinctly. Yeah. And I couldn't get a job other than cleaning hog pens and chicken coops. And that wouldn't pay my board. You could board for $5 a week, room and board, meals and so forth. And so I decided to go register for the Army at the draft board. So I went in.
At the ripe old age of 14.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I went in at 14, and my life was so good that they couldn't break it down, and I came out at 18.
Wow, that's quite a transformation.
Oh, yeah. And then it was, well, that's how I ended up in the Navy. That's an interesting story in and of itself. So anyway, I found all kinds of jobs. And the first one was digging footers for electric power lines in West Virginia.
I want to back up a second because I'm missing something here. So you went to join the Army, but you didn't, but you came out 18.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you were able to use that information.
Magic card.
Yes.
Said I'm 18 years old.
Okay. And that, for that, you were able to get jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm with you now.
Anyway, the folks wrote me and said they were going to lose the farm because they had taken on extra farm duty for the war effort, so forth and so on, and their farm was pledged if they couldn't keep the crops going, they'd be sued and lose the farm. So I went back and to Pike County, Ohio. I was living in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and helped with the farming. Yeah, I was supposed to be able to be free and have my cigarettes and all. Cigarettes was just an act of not rebellion, but freedom.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that went about 3 weeks or a month, and I was back into slavery again. So I left again. Ended up in Columbus, Ohio. And where the hell was I in this story? Anyway,
So you were hanging high line.
Yeah. I had this 18-year-old. I was 18-year-old, get a job anywhere I wanted to.
Right.
And I was staying in a boarding house, and this lady's son came back from the invasion. He was a paratrooper, and he was all screwed up in the head. And he made me his bodyguard. And I'm 14 years old. If you can imagine, you gotta.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine
that's
it
out
myself. He dressed me up in a Gestapo outfit, and we'd go into South Columbus. And I finally figured out why he wanted to make me his bodyguard. That was this diversion, and he would steal top coats. We'd go into a nightclub, and he'd find this top coat that was in. Everybody had that top coat, or you wasn't in.
Right.
So he'd find the best top coat and put his over it. And when we'd leave, he'd leave with 2 top coats, and he'd take one to the hock shop, and that would finance next evening's parade. Well, I didn't go for that because I'd been taught not thief or steal. I was raised in the church.
Right.
So anyway, I got rid of that. Couldn't find a job in town that was suitable, so I ended up on the farm, at a dairy farm, and the circumstances were so bad that it was intolerable to live. Colder than hell, and I had a place in the attic, and that was supposed to keep me warm. And one of the side effects of that, I had on a dairy farm with 30 cows, you got to get rid of the manure, and they put that on the farming ground as fertilizer. And at that time, they were still training people for the war effort. The war was still going strong.
Yeah.
The invasion had happened, but there was a war in the Pacific and a war in Europe that hadn't been won yet. And there was an airport about 5 miles of where we lived, and they'd come over and strafe me when I was spreading manure. And when you get a manure spreader going so fast, it throws it back on you. And I'd get off of that manure spreader and have more manure on me than the fields had on it.
Oh, no.
And these guys they probably had a hell of a laugh about it. And the farmer told me you don't put the brattle in a horse's mouth before you get it off the rack, or you'll take the hide off their mouth, just like sticking your tongue to a doorknob.
Yeah.
And I got the idea. I didn't have to be trying. And so I held with that, and I socked them right into the horse's mouth, and I took the hide off of them. And when they come over to strafe me, pulled back, and they'd stand on their hind legs, and got rid of that noise. But anyway, having lived with this guy as his bodyguard and living on the farm, I had to I couldn't tolerate this cold in the attic. I'm still intolerant of cold. I can take heat up. I roofed in Arizona when it was 120 degrees as an adult, but I was very sensitive to cold then and sensitive to it now. And so at one payday, I went to Columbus, and I saw this thing for the Navy, and so I enlisted, and I got away from and I took my training in the CB camp in Camp Perry, Virginia, and that's up on the James River, and anyway. Shipped up, and I ended up in Pearl Harbor. I ended up in a working party at sub base, and the tilefish was in dry dock there. And the old chief, he says, "Where are you from, kid?" And I said, "Columbus, Ohio," because that's where I'd enlisted. And he said, "So am I." And he wanted to talk about all the gin mills. Hell, I'd been in them. I was 18 years old.
That's right.
With the mentality of a 14-year-old. And so he said, "How would you like to be on the boats?" I thought he was talking about a damn rowboat. Right. And Pike County, Ohio, doesn't have a good sized pond. So he said, "No, that's a boat that you've been scraping on. It's the only ship in the Navy that can be legally called a boat."
That's right. So a lot of people don't know this.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
A ship is a ship, and that's something that sails on the surface.
Yeah.
The only thing that's a boat is what?
A submarine.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, he says, "I can fix it up." Now, it's unknown. It's a known fact that no sailor ever goes to be a crew of a submarine that hasn't gone to sub school.
Right.
And I didn't go to sub school. They were so anxious to get the submarine in the water that I finished out the crew, because they don't have no supernumeraries on a submarine. It's crew and that's it.
Yeah.
So I ended up on the boats. The submarine, and because I'd been in the gin mill and knew this guy, and he fixed it. Yeah,
he vouched for you, basically.
Yeah. Well, he had he knew his way around.
Yeah,
he was necessity is a mother of invention.
Yes.
So I ended up on the boat. And the first time out, I had a bow plane. Now, a sailor that's been through sub school knows all about this thing, and knows all the hydraulics and all the pumps and so forth and so on. I didn't know a damn thing about it. I was on this bow plane goofing off literally, and I damn near wrecked us because you get a submarine that's fully trimmed.
Okay.
We were in full trim. That means all your tanks are full.
Yep.
And everything. And so if you get in a dive too great, which I think is around 6 degrees, memory serves me, and you can't trim out of it because you hit the bottom, you're dead. You can't pump anything anywhere.
Right.
And the Germans, interesting, had a way of getting out of that. They run the crew forward and aft if you watch the movies.
Yeah. They used the crew as ballast.
Yeah. We didn't do that. So anyway, the diving officer whipped me away from it and chewed me out real good. And so I learned that lesson that way. But I never was in sub school, and that's a rarity. And so submarine, the scuttlebutt was that our whole squadron was after the Japanese submarines that had refused to give up after Pearl Harbor, after the Japanese surrendered in World War II. And so that was why I was on the submarine in the first place. And I guess that's about the end of it. I don't remember anything interesting about submarine, except you have to go through an act of Congress to use a head. You got to blow out, blow in, blow out. Because you have a pressure hull, and then you have the inner hull that's your living quarters. and it's separate from the outer hull. Now, I used to think after 80 years that we had lived in the pressure hull, but we don't live in the pressure hull, and because memory. I was trying to get a compensation for my dizziness.
Right.
I have what they call it.
Vertigo.
Vertigo.
Yes.
And I've been running that through my brain, and in fact, I tried to get a hearing to that effect, and it couldn't work because the inner space was where the crew lived. They had. You can't make atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah, so the atmosphere that we had, they recirculated and had bled oxygen in it. Now only the people that built those damn things know that. I didn't know anything about it, but that's obviously how it worked. And so that when we dived or surfaced, they always went back to our where we were accustomed to breathing and living.
Yeah, it equalized the pressure in that inner cabin.
Yeah, we are because if you take a 100-foot pipe, put a gauge at the bottom of it, and it'll give you 47.9 pounds of pressure, and you multiply that, say 300, where it's a good cruising depth for a submarine, and you've got 120 pounds or thereabouts pressure on you, and that would give you the bends, because you come up in a hurry and you go down in a hurry, and the body couldn't acclimate. So
so they just equalized the pressure, so it was always a constant pressure for the people
constant
inside.
Pressure on ourselves.
Yeah,
and they can after you come to the surface, that atmosphere is disposed of, and you're breathing the atmosphere, and so they just go down, and as the temperature rises, they pressurize the hull, but not you.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because it would hurt you if you.
Yeah, it would hurt us. So
Yeah.
There's nothing, as I told you earlier, there's nothing very interesting happened to me on the submarine except what I related to you just
Except
now.
you almost wrecked it.
Yeah. So, got out of the Navy. I had a wandering eye called strabismus, and I insisted. It was straight when I went on the submarine. You've got to be a perfect example of health to be on a submarine.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any means of being, it's not like a ship, a floating ship. Anyway, I went to the doctor and insisted that they straighten my eye again, because I had this watch, about 6 hours of watch on a bow plane, and it's like taking a level out on Lake Michigan, or one of the lakes, and keeping the bubble on zero. It's hairy. That's what you're doing when you're on a bow plane, and you have a bubble that the diving officer gives you. And I had we was a battle of the Coral Sea or some damn thing or other, an enactment of it, and I had about a 6-hour watch, an emergency watch, and my eye just couldn't handle it, because here we go, you're looking, you've got your eye on that bubble, and you could dash and take it off. I learned that early on, and so I insisted that I get the eye straightened, and they sent me to California, Balboa Hospital, to get it operated on. That ended my submarine career. Because you got to be a perfect specimen to be on the submarine. I ended up on the submarine tender, the Bushnell, AS-15, whatever.
Third loader, too.
Huh?
He's a third loader.
Oh, no, third on the submarine, I was on third loader on the cannon.
Okay.
5-inch cannon. Thank you, Bruce. And that's how my hearing got busted. I guess the beam of a submarine is probably 25 feet at best.
Right.
And probably a cannon takes up 10 feet of that. And from the ready locker to where the cannon is, you keep your weight as much as dead center as you can of the boat. It's easier to trim. The cannon was probably 10 feet from the ready locker. And I was third loader. So when you come up in a hurry because you are on the surface, you're a target.
Right.
And down below surface, when you're underwater, you're looking for a target.
Right.
So anyway, we didn't have earplugs. If we had them, you didn't know where the hell they were, and you never knew when you were going to dive or when that klaxon was going to go off, what the hell you was going to do. So you were, that quickly you react. So you don't take pads for your ear.
Yeah.
Then that caused me a deafness that I get a benefit from now. So anyway, being third loader on it, you maybe go through 10 rounds, and boy, that can give you a lot of shock. What is it? What's the expression for it? Don't.
Lots of decibels of noise, really. Yeah. So the sub would pop up, they would fire the gun, and then it would go back down.
They'd plot their target by the scope. And when we was up submarine, we was ready locker, boom, 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 quick, and to get our firing done, and then go down below again. Now, they done that ceaselessly. We were operated out to 1,000 mile out of Pearl Harbor, looking for, that's again is scuttlebutt. You know the word.
Oh, I do. I do.
So that's a logical explanation for it, because after the war, I enlisted 2 months after the war was over, by the way. Well, I have to back up on that. And the reason that I have a World War II service is that we were in a war zone the entire time that I was in the Navy on that submarine, under the submarine tender. And so I don't remember, it says so on my discharge somewhere, all the people that were involved in the Pacific submarine thing, out of Pearl Harbor particularly. Pearl Harbor was paranoid as hell about submarine sneaking in.
Yeah.
And with 12 torpedoes, ours, I think we carried 10 torpedoes. I think Japanese boats maybe carried 12 or more. And you could imagine what damage they could do underwater. We would have lost the war.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's why it was so urgent. And when I was discharged, I was discharged with full benefits of World War II.
Yeah.
And
so I don't want to interrupt you, but I want people to understand where scuttlebutt comes from, because you and I know this.
Yeah.
But scuttlebutt is basically the drinking fountain on the ship.
Yeah.
And that's where all the information gets disseminated.
Yeah, that's right.
Is at the water cooler.
The gossip, yeah.
Yeah. So if you work for a company, it's water cooler talk.
Yeah.
But in the Navy, it was called scuttlebutt, and that's where it came from. I just thought people should know that while they're listening.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were discharged as a World War II veteran then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we got. To let you know what happens to a World War II veteran at the time, you've got $300 mustering out pay. All the an Army, Navy, and Marine,
all the different branches of service.
All the different, and so they give you $100 at the time, plus your pay that you had coming. And they set you free. And a month from that time, you'll get another $100. and then another 100 for a total of 300. And they gave you 52 weeks of $20 a week. Somebody called it rocking chair money. Hank Williams wrote a song about it. I got rocking chair money. You want me to sing it?
Absolutely.
I got rocking chair money, and I got it the hard, hard way. I fought in every battle from VJ to the VJ day, and now I'm rocking all the way. Now
Thank you for that.
That was 52 weeks of $20 a week. At that time, the minimum wage was 25 cents an hour. So you can imagine what you could do.
This was money.
Oh, yeah.
This was rocking chair money.
Rocking chair money. You could pay $5 for your board for a week.
Yeah.
And have $15 to get out and whore around with. And whatever else.
And given your past, you know what that was all about.
Oh, yeah. I learned early. So that was great. And of course, that lasted you a year.
Yeah.
And all the veterans at the time I knew, young men particularly, because they could get in at 17 if somebody signed your papers, your birth certificate. And I was an orphan when I enlisted, so I had somebody to sign off on me as my parent.
Right.
And so I got in at 16 because they was taking you at 17. And so I have a different age in the Navy than I do then.
Right. And you've had a couple different ages in your lifetime, haven't you?
Yeah. So anyway, I from that I gravitated to. The first job I had was somebody suggested that since I was a sailor, I ought to know the knots and such. Well, I knew them when I was in boot camp,
right,
but I forgot them. And we were putting in a honeysuckle thing on where the highway was slipping down into the river, Howell River. By the way, that's where Daniel Boone with the Indians was trying to fricassee him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, and so I didn't remember my knots, so I borrowed a scout handbook to get this tree climber's knot. So I was a supervisory sort of. I was letting 20 or 30 men down that cliff, putting in
right
honeysuckle plants, and that was to stop the erosion.
Right.
And
so you best know the knot because these guys are dependent on this, right?
Yeah. But I've forgotten that knot. Good God, I'd give my interest in hell to know it now.
Right.
It was a great knot. You could let yourself down as you went. And stop and you pull it and you down and you get to the bottom. Why? I don't remember how they got back up again, but I was only concerned with up and down.
Right.
And so but then you fiddle around, and I have probably worked at a half a dozen different specialties in my life.
So where did you? So you ended up back in Ohio then after you got out of the service. Okay, I was just trying to figure that out. So you ended up back in Ohio. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just trying to get the timeline. So then you did that, and then you did some other.
Well, when we got out of the Navy, they took all these displaced people out of Europe. There were millions of them, and we were responsible for a lot of them. We took the responsibility for some of them, like for instance Poland, and put them to work. And this guy that was passing out driver's license, because everybody lost their license, for 3 or 4 years in the service. And
oh yeah.
So he says, I'm in the line, and he says, "You drive?" I said, "Yeah, I drive." "What you drive?" I said, "John Deere tractor." He says, "You give you a license." And he wrote me out a driver's license. I've never taken a test since. I was telling Bruce about that. So anyway, what the hell? Oh, yeah. So I was dating this gal that was a beautician, and I'm just actually subsisting on my $20 a week.
Right.
And of course, the way you stretch that out, you find these young ladies that were enamored of the servicemen.
Right. And they're gainfully employed, right?
Yeah,
I
and,
think I see where this is
they'd
going.
feed you your breakfast and lunch and hide the, if the boss is gone, and if he was, and you had another one, you always had alternatives. So, yeah. So, anyway, I met this beautician, and I was sleeping with her, of course. And she says, Marv, you got the GI Bill of Rights, and you can borrow up to $100,000, I think, at the time, and they'll pay your tuition. Why don't you become a hairdresser, a beautician, and we can pool our resources and our knowledge, and we'll open up a chain of huts. So it sounded like a good idea. So I enrolled in this beauty thing, and about halfway through the school, she went elsewhere.
She disappeared on you.
She disappeared, yeah. And what hell do I do with a half of an education? So I finished the education.
Yeah.
And I never worked professionally at it. So I came to Michigan to enhance my education. There's a fellow called Anthony that would let you sit in his class for $100 a week. Now that's when the minimum wage was probably 30 cents an hour.
That's a lot of money.
And the automobile industry was paying 60 cents an hour.
Yeah.
I went to work for Hudson Motor Car Company. And one day I was sitting eating my lunch, and I was thinking about, now here I am working for 60 cents an hour to give this guy my payday and go back to Portsmouth, Ohio, and maybe make $50 a week. That don't, the
math doesn't
mathematics
work.
didn't pan out right, so I chucked it. And ended up hanging aluminum siding for making good money at that.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of people out there who don't even know aluminum siding existed, right? Because it's all vinyl siding now.
Yeah, it's all vinyl.
She was hanging aluminum siding.
It started out being aluminum siding.
Yeah.
The industry, plastic hadn't got a hold yet. And so somewhere along the way, I became professional. I became a professional industrial coatings troubleshooter. I knew all about the equipment needed to coat everything from electrophoresis to hydraulic painting, silk screening. If it had anything to do with paint, I was specialist in it. And I was... So I worked for Sherwin-Williams, and every company I worked for wanted to give me further education, and of course I sopped it up like a sponge.
Yeah, why not?
I had myself a refrigeration business, and I worked for Chrysler Air Temp at the time, and I had the business on the side. And I made more money on the weekend than I made all week at Chrysler Air Temp. And I wanted to know about refrigeration, they'd give me a book. I knew the people that knew the things. And education's as close as your nearest library. I'm a self-educated man, or boy, or wherever the hell I am. I feel like a young man, but I'm...
Well, according to the rest of your life, you could be whatever age you want, Marvin.
Yeah.
You can just pick an age, right?
Yeah. And anyway, I'm kind of hard to keep a trend of thought here. I ditched that. Anyway, I guess I got married. somewhere along the way.
Yeah. When did you get married?
Oh, hell, I don't remember, but I got a son 73 years old, so I was probably in my 20s.
Okay.
And I needed more income, so I had myself a do-it-yourself business, a refrigeration building, do anything in your kitchen that you could do in the shop.
Yeah.
And did. And so I bought a refrigerator at an auction. The damn thing wouldn't work. And so it was a sulfur dioxide system.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured out how to make it work. And therein started the business. And I called it Blizzard Refrigeration. The refrigeration was coming on big.
Yeah.
Because everybody had done without during the war. And in those days, the common refrigerant was sulfur dioxide. And it works under a vacuum as opposed to Freon and the other refrigerants. And anyway, that's how I got into the refrigeration business. Now, I used to paint those refrigerators. And I bought myself a paint gun. It cost me about $100 at the time. That's a hell of a lot of money for a paint gun.
Must have been a nice paint gun.
It was DeVille's paint gun. And paint always didn't turn out right. So I went to Moran Paint Company and asked them why don't we teach them that, particularly in nitrocellulose. And they give me a book. So I read the damn book. And Lau Brothers, a division of Sherwin-Williams, had a ad for a sales correspondent. So I answered the ad and knew more about the damn business than the guy that was interviewing me. So I got the job thumbs down. And they decided to make me a paint salesman.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't work out because on the way to my territory, a lot of time has elapsed. On the way to the territory, I was driving one of those biggest Chevy that was made, and the sales manager was with me, and we was down in somewhere in Indiana, and I couldn't keep the damn thing on the road. And the sales manager had given me a bad time over it. Well, I had a short fuse. I told him, if you can drive this thing any better than I can, you're welcome to it. That ended my sales career. So I became a troubleshooter.
Oh.
Yeah. So they put me through lots of school, sent me to the Vilba school. And so, I'd already been in the industry.
Right.
And I knew the chemistry of it because I read the damn book that they give me at Moran Paint to get them get me out of their hair. You know?
Right.
And so time passed and I became expert. And so I was a consultant on the pipeline in Alaska for urethane foam and so forth. People that bid it in Columbus, where the hell was I? I was in Arizona by this time. I've lived in 13 states by
I was going to say, so California, back to Ohio, Michigan, Alaska.
Yeah.
Now you're in Arizona.
Let's see. I ran off a branch of an office. I had a branch of a company out of Utah, and couldn't make it pay. So I went to Utah and became troubleshooter for the organization. We had about 11 outfits on the road.
And what kind of work was this?
Urethane foam.
Oh, okay.
We made sprayed potato cellars and apple cellars and so forth and so on for insulation. And urethane foam is a trade of all of its own. It's a whole science that, we've done everything from roofs to fruit sellers and so forth. And then I say I was a consultant on a Bailey Bridge project for the Vietnam War. We was doing them in Marion, Ohio, and I became the company that I have consulted with proselytized me from the company I was working for. The salary made me the head honcho for about 120 people in an Army depot at Marion, Ohio. So I had a stint at that, and whatever I wanted to do, the world was my oyster because I had a vocabulary that was comparable to a PhD. I don't have it now because my memory's gone to hell in a handbasket.
Oh, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, but I had it in those days because I made it a point when I was 10 years old to read a page of the dictionary every night. I got that book, and I don't know where the hell I got it from, but I never let it go. In my house, you'll find all kinds of dictionaries and a thesaurus, and the Bible, of course.
Right.
And because that was my education. And I was college educated, of course, in all respects. Of course, if you can speak the language of a science, you in effect know the science. So when I applied for a job, I never was at a loss for words. I manipulated the conversation most of the time because I knew how. I'd been doing it since I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
So, I told you there's nothing particularly interesting about my life.
Well, so did you remain a consultant then throughout your career?
Yeah, we're necessary. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you have a son who's 73, so he would have been born in 20. So he'd have been born in the 50s, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been married 4 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
so the third time's not the charm?
Second one was.
Okay.
I got that woman made a man out of me, really. She had 7 children. All of them are college educated and professionals.
Yeah.
So it worked out well. Through the divorce, I supported them all. I think a deadbeat son of a bitch is going to split hell wide open.
Yeah.
And I never would be one. So anyway.
So you had a nice long career. You had 4 wives. When did you finally retire? From that kind of work, anyway. Well, I could ask you a couple of questions if that's all right.
Okay.
So while we're thinking about that, I know that you stayed active with veterans. Anyone can see you're wearing your VFW 6132 hat.
Yeah.
When did you start getting involved with the VFW and those organizations?
No, when I got out of the Navy, the VFW used to have dances every Friday night. That's in Portsmouth, Ohio. Well, I was on the 5220.
Yeah.
And I'd go to those dances, and VFW is that. I first became a Freemason, and that was in, I guess, I was living in Indiana, and I was a troubleshooter for Egyptian lacquer manufacturing company out of New Jersey. I worked in New Jersey for them, and they transferred me to Lafayette, Indiana, and that's where I entered the Freemasons, and I became, I never given much thought. I never, for instance, wore a World War II cap or so forth.
Right.
Until I met Bruce. And he got me into the VFW. And because, I have all the necessary papers for it. And that's
Okay.
that's when I got. Then I went to all the things that he and I attend. You know, Bruce is Geppetto to and I'm Pinocchio.
Okay. I got you.
He runs interference for me and manipulates me what he wants me to do. He thinks I'm not onto him, but
Keeps you on the straight and narrow a little bit there, too.
Yeah, we have a
honor fight.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. You went on the honor flight?
Yeah,
to DC?
Bruce says we need to get involved in that, and so he got in touch with Slotkin, how we go about doing it, and so we went through the detail of it, and so we was accepted, and they took us from here to what the hell's the name of that?
Traverse City.
Traverse City. And put us up in a hotel, and so we took a plane out of Traverse City. Now, it's interesting. We got on the plane, and Bruce says, I'll get you I'll talk to these stewardess and see if we can get you an open mic. I had a briefcase full of poetry, you know.
Right. So something we hadn't talked about is, Marvin, you write poetry. Oh, yeah. You write a lot of poetry.
Oh, a lot of it, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Right. So you get on the plane, and they're looking for an open mic for you.
Yeah, so I got an open mic, and these two stewardess, I'm trying to make out with them, of course.
Of course,
you never leave a good-looking woman unapproached. Yeah, and that's a science in itself. But anyway, he got me an open mic, and so I read my poetry. I had a lot of it in memory at the time. I had a lot better shape than then. How long has it been? It's only been a year and a half ago. Boy, when you're in your 90s, it goes fast.
Yeah.
The deterioration.
Yeah.
Anyway, got up that open mic, and I recited, probably half a dozen different verses that I'd written. One, I'll give you an example. I don't believe that God will disfavor us because because we were warriors. I don't believe God will disfavor us because in the Bible He favored warriors everywhere. I rather think we'll gain His favor because great warriors we really were. So rest in God's peace. Rest in peace. You sleep in God's favor. He has. You sleep in God's favor. He showed us many times the righteous shall not fall. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You sleep in God's favor. He's the greatest warrior of us all. He showed us many times the righteous shall not fall. Now, that's a good piece of poetry. I'll give a damn if I have to say it myself.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
And I wrote the one about warriors, one and all.
You yodeled to the plane.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you yodeled for us when we were at the museum, and
that's
and
right.
I would be remiss if I didn't let the audience hear you yodel for us. So Marvin, you need to yodel for us.
Yeah. I got on that plane and I run out of verse, and so I says, well, I'll do some music for you guys, and I yodeled for them. I love sick blues. Yodelay, 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 yodelay. I got a feeling called the blues, oh Lord, since my baby said goodbye. And I don't know what I'll do. All I do is sit and cry. Oh Lord, that last long day she said goodbye. Oh Lord, I thought I would cry. She do me, she'll do you. She's got that kind of lovin'. Hell after her when she calls me sugar daddy. Such a beautiful dream. I got to thinking it over. I lost my heart, it seems. I'm grown so used to you somehow. I'm nobody's sugar daddy now when I'm lonesome. I got the lovesick blues. Yodelay,
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that.
At 95 years old, I think I tend to agree with you.
Wow, that's my kind of music, actually.
Yeah, really?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So I sing a couple others. I don't remember.
So you were the flight entertainment, basically.
Yeah. And everybody knew me, but I didn't know everybody. And so when I got off the plane, everybody wanted their picture made with me. And Bruce he introduced me to everybody, and he helped my career. All you have to do is have Bruce run an interference for you, and
right.
You get. He just takes my personality and magnifies it. Now.
Well, and so Marvin, we've talked about Bruce. Bruce is actually sitting at the table with us right now.
Oh yeah,
and he's been helping us along. You'll hear Bruce's story too, as well, because we're gonna get Bruce behind the mic at some point here. But I just wanted to point out that we're not talking about Bruce and he's not here. Bruce is here, and he's been very helpful in getting Marvin to this session. So Bruce, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
You know what? Swamp cooler is?
I do.
Okay.
I do know what a swamp cooler is.
In Arizona, the swamp coolers can drop a house, any house, if it's sufficiently sized, 20 degrees in temperature. Now, that works fine until the house becomes saturated and you can't evaporate any more water into the air. It's a refrigeration principle, very, very simply. And so some guy got the sweet idea, we'll piggyback air conditioning with it. So when your air becomes saturated, you have an instrument that tells you and turns on your air conditioner, takes the water out of the air, and then you repeat the cycle all over again.
Yeah.
So I had an ad in the paper that I was a contractor because I'd worked at all the skills, everything from drywalling to timber cutting. Oh yeah, I cut timber when I was 12 years old. I was a slave. Back then, not changing the thing here. And anyway, I showed up at this lady's house, and I spent probably an hour trying to figure out how I could put a swamp cooler into her refrigeration system, and it didn't work. Now, I later found out while I was sleeping with her on the opposite wall, I could have took a side out of the wall and put a swamper in there, and still it would work the same way, you know. But that's hindsight.
Always thinking.
Always thinking. Always thinking. Anyway, when I told the lady, there's no way I can do for it, nothing I can do for you. And she said, felt bad about it. She says, can I take you to dinner, at least as a compromise? Or, you know.
Yeah, it's a way to say thank you.
Yeah, a way of saying thank you, yeah. And I said, well, fine. And I went to dinner. We went to dinner. And she said, and I says, may I call on you? And she says, please do. So I called on her with a bouquet of roses. And we talked and blah, blah, blah. And after a couple of 3 dates, I was sleeping with her. And she must have liked what she found because she proposed to me.
Oh.
Yeah, not at that time. I was telling her about beautiful West Virginia in the spring. By the way, you have the same features I have. Are you aware of that?
No.
You have, isn't he? Doesn't he?
Yeah.
You could be my brother, my father. Anyway, but that's an aside. Anyway, we dated back and forth, and we used to go a lot to Vegas. So we'd stay at my sister's, and we'd try to buy groceries or try to buy this and that, and she would have no part of it.
Yeah.
So I was telling my lady that I was dating, I will call her Krista as her name, I said, we ought to buy something for my sister as a gift. Sure, we appreciate her hospitality. And she says, great idea, do it, and I'll put you in half. So I did it, and her half never showed up.
Huh.
And I said, "Piss on you, lady. I don't need this." And I went on to my house. I had a couple properties in Superior, Arizona, because I had a real estate license. And so I invested. And I was invested several ways. And so she kept calling me. I just cut her off. Mm-hmm. And the way to get a woman, if she's interested in you, really interested, just cut her off.
Yeah. We call that plan hard to get.
They can't handle that. So anyway, she finally, by accident or somehow or other, I answered the damn phone, and she says, "You rotten son of a bitch." That's what she said. Uh-huh. "You promised to take me to West Virginia to see the flowers and wet in the mountains." So German people are flower crazy. If you've ever been to Germany, you notice that. Every household has a rose garden.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, I lived there 4 years. Anyway, I said, "Okay, but you buy the car, you pay the expenses, and I will take you, by God," and so forth. Well, that lasted one day, and of course I'm back in the sack with her on the way to West Virginia. And so we get to West Virginia. She bought a new car, and she paid all the expenses, and I just went along, and I was a stud.
Right.
Yeah. So
you were a kept man.
So we get to West Virginia, and I have a brother that lived in Wayne County, West Virginia, and so she liked to look at real estate. I had a license, and so I could tell her this and that and the other about it. And we went to look at this property. It's had 17 acres, 12 acres of timber, 5 acres of lawn, and so forth. And about, it was a 3-bedroom house. Mm-hmm. And it had a price on it. And she says, "Let's buy this, let's get married." And no, she says, "Let's buy this house and get married." And I said, "What the hell do I want to buy another house for? I've got 2 in Phoenix." And I did have, because the house that I'd lived in Phoenix, I'd leased, and I had to buy another one to have a place to live after I quit shacking up with her.
Right.
So I always had money. And so she said, "Well, if you don't want to buy the damn house, I'll buy it. Let's get married." And I said, "Well, I was between marriages at the time. Why the hell not, you know?" But I said, "Now you have your estate, and I have my estate. And you buy this damn house, I'll do what you need to do to make it to your liking. And but you pay all the materials, all the expenses, and I'll do the labor." Now the labor is worth more than the materials,
Right?
Because an old rule in takeoff and carpentry is 3 times the raw material is the labor.
Yeah.
No. So if you've been anyway, that worked out pretty well. I told her, "You have yours, and I have mine," and we worked it that way. And I flipped 6 houses for her, in fact. Mm-hmm. And I flipped one in Colorado that made her $80,000. I bought it at $140, sold it at $220, and I had 2 representatives of real estate companies bidding at it. That's a dream. That's a salesman's dream.
Oh yeah, just let them fight it out.
Yeah. And in fact, I told the people that there's 2 people there. The one says, "Well, I would like to make a counteroffer." I says, "I do not like playing one human against another, but if it's in the best interest of my family, I'll make an exception. So what is your offer?" She went up $10,000.
Uh-huh.
And so I closed the deal. And she gave me a couple $1,000 gift for making the deal. But hell, I took walls out of a house, not load-bearing walls. I knew better than that.
Right.
The one place I put in a bidet, and I had 17 joints out on the floor with the floor removed that I had to solder. And I made 17 joints and know how to have a leak. My God, that's hallelujah.
Someone was smiling on you that day. That's got to be a record.
Yeah. And that's the West Virginia house, of course.
Yeah.
We lived together a long time, 20 some odd years. She wanted to move to Germany, and we was living in North Willow, 2 doors from the St. Gerard's Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second house on the left is Cape Cod House. You've seen it.
My dad actually lives over that way, so I'm driven by that house.
It has a white roof on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, she wanted to go back to Germany. She went at least 30 days a year. And she convinced me to go to Germany. I said, well, what the hell, I'm really interested in Germany. I've been all over the damn country. I'm tired of traveling. And it was. I've been all over the United States troubleshooting, you know. And so the Germans like to celebrate round birthdays. That's 60, 70, 80, 90, you know.
Yeah.
So I went to one, and you invite all the guests and pay for their bills. That could run $1,000, and it did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I went there a couple of times, and I got to know the family. They were all, you know, they were a household that had servants. She was a millionaire. And I discovered after I got into her. And anyway, when we moved there, her son was a doctor. We bought an apartment across the hall from him, which is a bad mistake. And he was a pusher, a controller.
Yeah.
I don't control easy.
Right.
And I was making a takeoff of the apartments that we'd bought. He says, well, you left off the ceiling. I says, the ceiling don't need paint, and I'm not going to paint it. And he says, well, I want it painted. And I said, you don't have the right to tell me what to do with my apartment. What the deal was, I paid the down payment on this thing, $72,000. I was in the stock market at the time, making the bucks, making out with it too. And so he was to carry the mortgage. It was his name. We lived in it 5 years, and then we could start paying rent.
Right.
But anyway, then we had a hell of an argument about it. Now, we're living, all of our furniture's in Munich. We're living in his office, and put a bed in it, moved his things out, and all we had is our what we had in our suitcases. So I had this hell of an argument with him, and he's bigger than you are. No, I wouldn't take him on,
right?
Because he'd kick my ass for sure. So anyway, words, and he's gets high on. He drank a fifth a day, and anyway, he was playing heavy metal. Now, you know what my taste is in music.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this. My wife's got her damned ears plugged. She didn't hear a damn thing. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up and went in and sarcastically said, can't you play the damn thing any louder? And he did. And at 10 o'clock, I was out of the damned house. And 12 o'clock, I was in the United States. And so there was my wife left behind. I didn't have anything against her. Loved the woman. My daughter says, who's a CPA, said, Dad, you've got a problem. And I said, what's that? And he says, well, you invested all these years with Krista, and she, particularly in utilities. And So if she liquidates those, because she'll roll them over for 20 years,
Right.
and if she liquidates them, you're going to have a hell of a bill. Guess where they'll come for the money? To come to you. Otherwise, they'll have to go through legal procedures and get into Germany, and all they got to do is just nail you down.
Right.
And so I went downtown and got me a divorce. Done it myself. Mm-hmm. I done her for divorce, by the way, from her husband in Germany at the time. So anyway, time goes on, and I was reconciled to leave her in Germany, and she took sick, and she kept calling me and calling me and calling me, and she says, if you'll come and help me out, I will pay the way here, and there'll be a ticket standing by any time that you want to leave and come back home. Well, I loved the woman.
Yeah.
And I'd lived with her for 20-some years. And so I went back, and I took care of her. I got her back on her feet, and I was with about 4 years. We went to Hungary. We went twice to Spain. We went to the Canary Islands, and all over Europe, because when they planned their vacation, the doctor always paid the bill, for thing, and we became friends again, Can't hold a grudge. It's not wise to do so. You let your ass regulate your appetite when you do.
Right.
And so, anyway, I made coffee. Germans like the coffee in the afternoon. It's a thing, And so I'd made coffee, and I'd pergoed the whole damn apartment, or patched what somebody who had pergoed it and beat it up. And I'd made coffee, and she hadn't drank it. I was working on the floor, maybe doing dishes or some damn thing or other, because I took over the housekeeping and everything.
Right.
Not a fee, just lived there. And she paid the grocery bill, of course. I cooked. She buy and I fry.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I said, hey, you haven't drank your coffee. Something wrong with it? She says, I'm kind of dizzy. And I said, well, let's find out what's wrong. And I took her over to the couch and put the stethoscope, the
blood pressure? The blood pressure
meter, yeah. And everything was kosher, 120 over 80 or some damn thing or other. Yeah. And so she said, no. And then I come back after I took her blood pressure. I took her, she was sitting from the table to the couch, which was a mistake. And I came back, and I spoke to her. She didn't answer me. I came back, and she had this glazed look on her face, just like she's frozen time. And I remembered that from my mother died of a stroke. And I remember that look on my mother's face. I don't know why the hell I did. I've never seen anybody else. And that's going back 85, 90 years.
Yeah.
80, or whatever.
A long time.
A hell of a long time. And so she didn't respond. And I went across the hall and got her son. The son was at home at the time. It must have been the weekend. And so he came over and he got her off the couch on the floor and started doing CPR on her. She never spoke a word. That's the way she always said she wanted to go.
Right.
And which makes me think maybe when I was threatening to come back home to the United States because I couldn't master the language. It was too late in my life. And I never had to. She spoke impeccable English and all the European dialects too, And there was no incentive to do so. But anyway, I couldn't master the language. I tried. And I reckoned that one day at my age, I'll end up in a nursing home, And guess who my compatriots would be? They would all be Germans, and they would all have memories of when we were at war, and the Americans was murdering their children. And what the hell would I be? You know, I'd have it on both sides, and I couldn't defend myself, so I'll go back home. I told her that.
Right.
And I've just always wondered if maybe she didn't have it, since her doctor was, her son was a doctor, she didn't find out what she could use to exit real quick. And I've often wondered if she maybe committed suicide, because her diet was such, you know, Germans, when they live on pork, because their country's so small it doesn't allow for grazing. If you got it, if it's arable, they plant it.
Right.
So anyway, I always thought that maybe she done the suicide thing, because I was threatening to leave, come back. She was well again, you know.
Yeah.
And I was coming back to the United States because I didn't want to end up in a damn nursing home. You know, how long can your health last when you're 90 or 85 or whatever the hell I was?
Yeah.
It's been 5 years now, so it's probably, I was around 90. But you look at, when you're 90, you don't, you know, 72 is the average age that you expire. So,
what happened to her dad? What happened to her dad? That's how they ended up with all the money. Her dad ended up in a...
Oh, yeah. So we couldn't... So she died, and it was cremated, of course. And you can't scatter ashes in Germany. It's against the law. So her son contacted a person in Switzerland, which is 5 or 6 miles away. And so her ashes were sent to Switzerland, and Switzerland gave them back to my stepson, the doctor. And you can't scatter them on the lake either, but we rented a boat and went out and scattered them on the lake. And all these children, grandchildren and all, they want to be on I know the danger of a frickin' boat.
Right.
And they didn't, and they were whipping this damn thing all over the hell. And I thought, well, one time I'll just jump out and swim out of the frickin' lake and get destroyed. It was danger of my life. And of course, Lake Constance in Germany is 85 miles long. The Rhine River comes in this end and exits the other end. And it's a big lake, it's 10 miles between Switzerland and Germany. It's 10 mile wide places. And that's why it's the garden place of Germany. 10 mile away, you got the Alps.
Right.
And all that cold comes down and precipitates all the warmth of Germany, because the Rhine River is just like a new country.
Yeah.
You know, they got this and this, and boy, the garden stuff that you eat out of the garden spot of Germany is like nothing you ever eat in your life.
Pretty amazing.
Oh, fantastic! The strawberries are so sweet that you don't even have to put sugar on them.
Yeah.
And it's great. But I got to tell you about one of my experience on the Bushnell.
Yes.
Back in
So we're going to go all the way back to the Navy times, and you were on the Bushnell, which was a subtender, right?
Subtender.
Yeah.
They're about second in size to an aircraft carrier.
Oh yeah, they're big ships.
Big ships. And we had lost our skipper by transfer or whatever means. We didn't know. We didn't care. And he was replaced by a skipper from the battleship New York, the battleship. And prior to that time, the black people could only be stewards' mates.
Right.
But the equality movement had manifested itself to where they could be crew now. Mm-hmm. And so this fella, Knight, had been steward's mate to this skipper at Battle New York for 10 years. And when he came aboard, he seen Knight, and they just like like father and son.
Yeah.
And so he took Knight to the wardroom, and they rehashed old times, and they got Knight drunker than a skunk.
Uh-huh.
And it just so happened that Knight had, he was a sailor. He was not a steward's mate anymore.
Uh-huh.
And he had to watch in the crow's nest. We didn't have anything to look out for. We were port.
Yeah.
But
it was still a watch that had to be made.
It still had to be made. That's tradition.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tradition in the Navy. And so how the hell he ever got up into the crow's nest is anybody's guess, but drunk as he was.
Yeah.
So First Lieutenant, we'll call him Joe Clark, First Lieutenant Clark, had the days he was officer of the deck.
Yeah.
Officer of this day. And he's sitting in his office, and he's calling all the stations on the sound phone. And a sound phone doesn't require electric, it's sound transfer, I guess. You know more about that than I do.
Yeah, sound-powered phone. I know exactly what you're talking about. We still use them.
Anyway, he ahoy in the crows, ahoy here and ahoy there, and so forth, so on. And all the stations reported in, came to the crow's nest, ahoy in the crow's nest, no answer. Ahoy in the crow's nest, no answer. Ahoy in the crow's nest, no answer. So he got off his ass and went around to see why he couldn't get an answer from the crow's nest. So he looks up in the crow's nest. Now, Knight's up there.
Yeah.
He says, ahoy in the crow's nest, no answer. Ahoy in the crow's nest, no answer. Ahoy in the GD crow's nest. Knight hangs his head over the side and says, ha, ha, ha. And it drove that lieutenant nuts. So anyway, the legal aspects of law on the ship, it starts with the skipper, the captain.
Yeah.
And the captain was ill equipped to take any action against Knight because he got him in the condition he was.
Right. That was kind of his fault.
So I don't know how they handled it, but the skipper's got a lot of pull because he's the big man on the ship.
Yeah.
And so every time we'd see this lieutenant, and he didn't see us, if somebody say, ha, 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 and they drove the poor guy nuts, literally nuts. He had got a transfer off the ship. But I remember that because Bruce remembers it.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So you have lived a lot of years and a really long and interesting life. I mean, there's some great stories here.
Oh, yeah.
As we get close to kind of wrapping up our interview, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I've got 3 stories for publication at Reader's Digest. Of course, they take those and put those in the file away, and when they pull one out and publish it, they send you your due.
Right.
500. So I wrote this one about fishing. And I'll try to remember. Me and a Mexican friend of mine that used to be, when I was working at the mine, I had retired from the road and became a craft painter. I knew all about paint. I knew all the chemistry, and I knew how all the equipment as they use it. They had an airless that they'd bought, paid about $3,000 for it. Nobody knew how to use it. So I had applied for a job at the atomic plant they was building in atomic electric plant.
Oh yeah, the nuclear plant.
Nuclear plant. and they wanted to put me on hold for 3 months, and what the hell, I needed a job.
Right.
So they had this ad in the copper mine. So I answered the ad for a craft painter, and I was a master painter. I had a license to prove it. Mm-hmm. So I went to work for the mine, and I got to know the guy that passed out the tools and all. Mm-hmm. You know, he's a good fella to know.
Right.
And he was a Mexican, and we hit it off. And I took him fishing with me to Utah one time, and that's the time we forgot to bring any cornmeal or anything to fry fish with. Mm-hmm. Now, how the hell do you fry fish in a skillet? You can't do it because it sticks, and you got a hell of a mess.
Right.
So, necessity is a mother of invention. We had paper towels. So you wrap a paper towel around a fish after you've eviscerated him, fry him, take the towel off, and all the scales and everything, fins, comes off on the towel, and you've got the best filet you ever eat in your life.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, Mike and I went up this high lake. It's about 11,000, 12,000 feet, and it had been an old volcano, mm-hmm. and nobody knew the depth of the place. And we set our poles at about 30 degrees with heavy rocks and proceeded to shoot the shit. Maybe.
Right.
Anyway, I said, Mike, let's make a kachina. And he said, what the hell's a kachina? And I said, that's something the Hopi Indians or whoever the hell it is. They make one for corn, they make one for birth, and they make one. So we might as well make one for fish.
Yeah.
You find something that looks like a fish and whittle it out and throw it in the lake, and we'll catch fish, theoretically.
Makes sense.
And so he's whittling away on it. Come these two guys, and a Mormon missionary has a look that's distinctive from anything else you'll see in your life, mm-hmm. and people. So I recognized these guys coming. We had our lines propped up on, so I said, well, have some fun out of these guys, Mike. And he says, how you going to do that? I just follow my lead. And he says, okay. So they come up, and he says, where are you guys from? You having any luck? I said, no. Yeah, they said, what are your friends doing there? I said, he's making a kachina. Now, when he gets this kachina, he's a tribal medicine man. Boy, he's got some powerful medicine, so you wouldn't be around when this guy does his thing, because he gets dangerous. And when he's in the peyote in the medicine tent, shit, he becomes all kinds of miracles and bullshit. And then they said, well, what is he doing right now? And I said, well, he's working on a kachina. And when he decides to do his medicine, you'll hear him. So I was talking to him, and he's doing some of his guttural Spanish. Mm-hmm. Which is supposed to be an ancient medicine man, say. So when he gets the kachina fixed, he says, well, since you're the ancient medicine man, since you're the representative of the tribe, you want to throw in the thing? And I said, no. I said, you know the ceremonies, the ancient ceremonies, and he had some ancient guttural ceremonial talk, and he throwed that damn thing in the lake that quick. My line practically took my line away the fish.
Yeah.
And I pulled it in, and here's this fish perfectly bound up and twined, and the hook never got into his hide anywhere. Uh-huh. He's wound up in this thing. And I told these Mormons, I said, you see this? If you guys hadn't have been here, we would have had our friend right up on the land. You should see him in the medicine tent. Boy, right. This guy has got powerful medicine. You talk about your miracles in and the Mormon language, this guy's got him. So they walked away, and the younger one says to the older, "You don't suppose they had a trained fish, do you?" and the elder guy says, "Charlie, if you're going to sell the miracle of the Mormon language, the Mormon religion to the world, you got to believe in miracles. You just saw one. Let's go home."
Was that a trained fish?
Yeah. He said, Charlie wanted to know if that was, because that had been a trained fish. And the older guy told him that. Now, that's the way I wrote the story when I sent it to Reader's Digest. They accepted it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Superior, Arizona, there's what they called the amethyst, Apacheteers. It's the only place in the world they exist. They're about, you ever hear of them?
No.
They're about the size of marbles, and they're coal black obsidian. And the Indians used to come down out of that about 12,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 2,000 or 3,000 feet place in the canyon. And Indians knew how to get up and down, and they'd come down and rob the ranches and murder beef and cut him up and take him back and live it high on the hog. And somebody gave the white soldiers the know-how to how to get up there. And it so happened that they're feasting on that Apache, what's the thing they make the tequila out of?
Oh, agave.
Agave plant, sugar in it. And they're all drunken and having a hell of a good time. And then the soldiers come in and literally massacred these people, these Indians. And a lot of them committed suicide over the Apache Leap. And it's still there today, a couple of, I'd say 1,000 foot high. Just a big rock and escarpment. And highway runs under it, and the skeletons and still living on there. They stayed there for a lot of years because nobody wanted to go down on a climbing thing and get them and resurrect them. So anyway, the fable is that these Apacheteers are the tears of the maidens that their lovers committed suicide rather than be captured, and that's their tears, and they dig them up out of the sand.
Oh, okay.
That's the fable, the legend of the Apacheteers, the tears of the women that grieved for the lovers that had committed suicide over the thing. And they sell Apacheteers there, and they're obsidian and beautiful. If you're a rock hound, you've got to have them in your outfit. They're beautiful obsidian. You've seen obsidian.
Yes. Yep, I have.
And you put it on a wheel and do all kinds of things when they cut it up and so forth. So that
nice jewelry with it.
You know the history of Tecumseh?
No.
Well, he was the Indian that was educated by in the white. He knew the language, and he was a personal friend of Tyler, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, in history. Anyway, he had organized all the Indians and the lake tribes to the extent that the United States government would have had to done business with him. His brother was a so-called prophet that he was blind in one eye and so forth. Now, they came to a fight at about 10 mile up the river on the Wabash River, 10 mile from what the hell is the University, Lafayette, Indiana, at the Wabash River. And it's still there. That's the prophet had convinced the Indians that the bullets from the American, the soldiers couldn't hit him. Of course, he was wrong as hell, and when they come to battle, they just mowed him down. But that was a tragic thing for the Indians, because Tecumseh had all these people organized, and the only time that the Indians were ever as a group, and he had them all over the Lake tribes. Now they do that in Chillicothe. They have a reenactment of that. It's out in the woods, and they have the river, the lake, and everything. They've gone a lot of trouble to put it down. If you ever get to Chillicothe and you want to see that, it's the reenactment of the Battle of Tippecanoe. In Indiana, it's called Battleground, and still there. And all the monuments and everything to who died where and so forth, and Prophet's Rock, where the prophet gave his talks to the Indians, where the battle all happened.
Right.
And it's an eerie experience to go through that battleground and read all those things there.
Well, that'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, you can see it in action. Now, my wife and I, she was. We owned about 4 motorhomes, and she wanted to see the United States, so I took her everywhere she wanted to go. The Lewis and Clark expedition, we'd drive it all over New York, and not New York, New Mexico, and all the 50-mile the most remote highway in the United States, 50 miles of it through the Las Vegas desert.
Yeah.
And you don't see nobody.
No, that's a long drive.
You ever been on it?
I have not.
You've read about it, I'm sure.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing but desert all the way, 50 miles of it. Now, her father, how the wealth was garnered, he had been a CEO of who's the electric people? Siemens and Berlin. War come along, and he put his resignation in, and he was a member of the party. Nobody that had any job of any significance belonged to the party, the Nazi party, this is. So and the war come along, their house was within a block and a half of the airport, and the first bomb fall, he decided to move his family south to the Schwarzwald, or Black Forest. Schwarz mean black and Wald mean forest. Schwarzwald. And so they did. And he took his savings and bought a department store. They were practically giveaway at the time because nobody could get merchandise to put in them.
Right.
So, but he was a go-getter. He was a mover and shaker. So he got somebody. He got his store whiz banging, and somebody blew the whistle on him, or said that he was a black marketeer.
Right.
And of course, the Gestapo come and picked him up in his pajamas, and he never got to say goodbye to his family. Nobody ever seen or heard from him. 4 years later, he got out of there. In the meantime, though, before he let his brother manage the store, and he came out of he went in at the concentration camp, weighing probably close to 200 pounds, and came back at less than 150. Yeah, 125 or something, walking skeleton. And in 10 years, he parlayed the one department store into 5. And my wife, he sent her to college in Munich to be a lawyer. So she went through it and passed her exams and all, and had a degree in law, and never took the
the boards.
the board, a bar.
Yeah, the bar exam, that's right.
Anyway, he done so because he wanted her to take over his things when he expired.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't. She had her own idea of what she wanted to do with her life. So she married an Episcopal priest. And they were in, and they went to college together in Munich. And that's how, but anyway, he when he died, he left 5 daughters, no sons, 5 daughters millionaires. My wife was one of them, the one that I told you about, the Marion. And we had a hell of a good life. But,
I can imagine.
But since I had divorced her, when she died, I forgot to tell you the kicker, I didn't even get as much as a handkerchief for all my effort.
Right.
Because I had divorced her, and she changed her will in the 4 years that I was divorced from her.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect anything anyway, didn't want anything. So I had 120 people under my command at Marion Depot to rebuild Bailey bridges. We took all those Bailey bridges that was used in World War I and World War II and refurbished them so that they could go to the Vietnam War. And that's because I was a consultant on the $7 million bid to do that.
Went on to the next thing.
And it ended up in Arizona.
Yeah.
In a new career.
Well, with all of that, right, we are coming kind of close to the end of our conversation. But I do want to ask you one question. You've lived a long life. You've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And you've had good times and you've had bad times.
Yeah.
If someone's listening to this 100 years from now, when neither of us are around, what do you want people to take away from your life?
Yeah.
What message would you have for people?
Yeah, it gives it back what you put into it. I never got an education because somebody snapped their fingers and gave it to me. I studied it, and I studied hard. Yeah. So anyway, I think life gives you back the dividend that you put into it. It's like an investment in money. I mean, in the market.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a verse that I wrote about it.
Well, let's end this on your verse.
Okay.
Let's do that.
If you want to make money, you buy the Wall Street Journal. On the other hand, invest in God, read your Bible, and you'll have life eternal. After all, the fool and his money is soon parted. God's love is not a gamble. God's love is manifest. So you better now get started.
Thank you for listening to the Veterans Archives podcast, where every veteran story is honored and celebrated. Join us as we explore the rich histories and experiences of those who have served our nation. You can catch our podcasts on all major podcast platforms, as well as every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wreaths Across America Radio. At Veterans Archives, we believe your story matters. Visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org to discover more about our mission, access resources for veterans, and stay updated on upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to engage with our community. Subscribe, like, and share to spread awareness about our veterans' stories. Whether you're a veteran, a supporter, or simply curious about the profound journeys of those who have served, Veterans Archives invites you to listen in, learn, and be inspired. Join us as we continue to honor and preserve the legacies of our veterans. Remember, your story matters. Visit us online today at www.veteransarchives.org and connect with us on social media and stay informed and engaged. And as always, thank you for your support.